Some places lie to you, not through words, through pictures. Every year, millions of travelers drain their savings, cross oceans, and arrive at destinations they've dreamed about for decades. And within seconds, something feels wrong. The colors look duller than promised. The crowds suffocate every angle. The magic that filled Instagram feeds dissolves into disappointing reality. This happens more than the travel industry wants you to know. These 11 destinations have mastered looking better in pictures than they feel in person. What makes them disappointing is not random. There is a pattern. Once you understand it, you'll never waste money on overhyped places again. The disconnect between expectation and reality costs travelers more than money. It costs the irreplaceable resource of limited vacation days. The average person gets roughly 2 weeks of annual leave. That's about 730 hours of freedom per year to explore. Wasting even 48 hours at a disappointing destination means losing nearly 7% of your annual adventure potential. That loss compounds across a lifetime. If that matters to you, stay with me through all 11. Number 1. The Leaning Tower of Pisa. Every traveler knows the pose. One arm extended, pretending to hold up 800 years of architectural failure. The Leaning Tower of Pisa has become so synonymous with tourist photography that the actual experience rarely enters conversation. Here's what photographs never show. The tower stands in a modest field, surrounded by thousands attempting the exact same pose. Tour buses deposit waves every 15 minutes. Vendors circle selling identical souvenirs. The lean, while impressive as engineering curiosity, loses impact when you realize it's only 56 meters tall, barely 14 stories. We expect an ancient marvel defying physics. Instead, we find a relatively short tower in a crowded field where personal space ceases. Heat radiates off white marble, elbows jostle, cameras click endlessly. Maria, a Pisa photographer, revealed tourists spend 47 minutes average at the site. 39 involve waiting in lines. 8 minutes remain for actual appreciation. What strikes most visitors is the stark emptiness afterward. Pisa offers little else to justify the journey. After that singular photograph, visitors ask, was that it? That question haunts more destinations than this one. Number 2. Stonehenge. Ancient mystery should feel profound. Stonehenge promises exactly that. 5,000 years of history crystallized in massive stones, arranged by ancestors whose methods still puzzle engineers. Visitors expect to wander among monoliths, touching surfaces prehistoric hands placed. Instead, they discover a rope barrier keeping everyone 12 meters away. 12 meters. That distance transforms intimate history into a photograph viewed across a room. The stones themselves, while massive, appear smaller than imagination suggests. The tallest reach only 9 meters. Visitors picture something grander, dominating the horizon. Instead, they find a modest field beside a busy road where traffic noise bleeds into sacred silence. We approach along a designated pathway, shuffling with hundreds craning necks. Wind sweeps across Salisbury Plain, carrying damp grass and diesel scents. Audio guides narrate astronomical theories, but the physical experience feels hollow. James, a heritage guide of 11 years, admitted most people leave within 20 minutes, barely exceeding driving time. That ratio reveals truth. The journey often exceeds the destination. Number 3. The Hollywood Walk of Fame. Dreams built this boulevard. For over a century, aspiring actors traveled to Hollywood believing star-studded sidewalks represented entertainment pinnacle. The walk stretches 2 kilometers, featuring over 2,700 brass stars in pink terrazzo. It sounds impressive until arrival. What photographs hide is surrounding condition. Homeless encampments dot adjacent streets. Aggressive vendors hawk tours. Stars themselves sit cracked, stained, or debris-covered. Finding a specific star requires navigating tourists hunched over phones. Avoiding grime between cleanings, the smell hits first. Hot concrete, vehicle exhaust, something sour in doorways. We walk past star after star, recognizing names but feeling no promised glamour. Buildings flanking carry little architectural significance. Souvenir shops sell knockoffs. Costumed performers demand payment for photos. Security feels necessary, not ceremonial. Rosa, a nearby business operator, offered perspective. Tourists expect red carpets and movie magic. They find a sidewalk needing pressure washing. This gap between expectation and reality might be the widest on our list. Number 4. The Mona Lisa. Leonardo da Vinci spent 4 years creating the most famous painting in human history. It measures 70 by 53 centimeters, barely exceeding a laptop screen. Millions flood the Louvre annually seeking this single artwork, navigating halls filled with masterpieces, barely glancing at works anchoring other museums. All paths lead to one room where chaos replaces reverence. The Mona Lisa hangs behind bulletproof glass 6 meters from nearest viewers. That distance, combined with modest dimensions, means most cannot see revolutionary details. The famous smile becomes vague suggestion. Atmospheric perspective dissolves into murky browns. We press forward with hundreds, smartphones raised above heads, fighting for position. Body heat radiates, elbows find ribs. Viewing window lasts 30 seconds to 2 minutes before crowd pressure forces movement. In that brief window, most see their own reflections in glass more clearly than the painting. Emile, a Louvre security officer stationed there 8 years, revealed, people look at the painting average 15 seconds before turning for a selfie. The selfie lasts longer. That inversion captures modern tourism. Proof of presence matters more than experience itself. Number 5. The Blarney Stone. Kissing this stone supposedly grants eloquence. For centuries, visitors climbed Blarney Castle in County Cork, laid on backs and pressed lips against limestone in the castle wall. The legend enchants. Reality raises unaddressed questions. To kiss, visitors must lean backward over a significant drop gripping iron railings while an attendant holds their torso. The stone sits awkwardly, requiring body contortions feeling neither romantic nor mystical. The legend omits, approximately 400,000 people kiss this same stone annually. Each set of lips presses the same surface. Studies find bacteria traces on similar high-touch attractions. While staff clean regularly, sheer volume raises hygienic concerns. Gift shops avoid mentioning. We climb spiral steps worn smooth by millions of feet. Damp stone and centuries of moss scent fills breaths. Wind whips through battlements. The view genuinely impresses across Irish countryside, but the queue snakes around parapets moving slowly as each completes awkward communion. Aidan, a local historian, shared complicating context. The stone was installed during 19th century renovation. The original tradition might have involved a different stone. What visitors kiss today might be Victorian-era invention marketing medieval magic. Number 6. The Pyramids of Giza. This resets everything about disappointing destinations. The pyramids deliver on scale. The Great Pyramid stands 139 meters. Mathematics behind construction still generates debate. Standing at their base creates legitimate human insignificance against ancient ambition. So why disappoint? Answer has nothing to do with pyramids themselves. Everything to do with surroundings. Photographs frame pyramids against empty desert, suggesting remote isolation with ancient mysteries in timeless silence. Reality positions them adjacent to Giza suburbs. A Pizza Hut sits close enough for background photographs. Traffic noise penetrates sacred space. True disappointment involves human behavior. Aggressive vendors swarm every tourist. Camel operators quote one price, demand another. Children sell trinkets with harassment-level persistence. Saying no becomes constant exhaustion. We walk toward the Great Pyramid as vendors materialize from every direction, thrust items forward, follow for dozens of meters after refusal. Sun beats relentlessly. Sand coats everything in hot gusts. Magnificence competes with commerce chaos. Ahmed, a Giza guide of 19 years, expressed frustration reflecting broader problem. Tourism infrastructure damages experience. Visitors remember hassle more than history. Pyramids exist as ancient hands built them. Context transformed wonder into something requiring active mental filtering to appreciate. Number 7. The Little Mermaid. Hans Christian Andersen created beloved literature in 1837. Copenhagen honored that legacy in 1913 with a bronze statue becoming Denmark's most visited attraction. Over 1 million journey to Langeleni Pier annually to see her. What they find measures 125 centimeters tall, eye level for an average 4-year-old. The smallness shocks. Tourists, imagining flowing hair and dramatic seaside presence, discover a modest bronze figure perched on a boulder, surrounded by others wearing identical, confused disappointment. Setting offers compensation. Copenhagen's harbor stretches behind with maritime character. Seagulls cry. Salt air mingles with working waterfront sounds, but the statue offers almost nothing to examine. A minute exhausts visual interest. We stand among crowds, cameras pointed at toddler-sized figure, collective energy feeling apologetic. People know they should feel moved. Fairy tale touched childhoods. Physical reality cannot support emotional weight brought. Ingrid, a Copenhagen harbor resident, summarized, "Tourists come worldwide, spend 30 seconds looking confused, then ask what else to see. That confusion reveals how destinations market themselves. The Little Mermaid sells Copenhagen tickets, the statue sells only disappointment. Yet industry promotes it as essential experience because admission remains free and image photographs well from specific angles." Number 8. Plymouth Rock. American schoolchildren learn about this rock, the Mayflower, the Pilgrims. Founding of a nation, Plymouth Rock represents symbolic birthplace of American origin stories shaping generations. Visitors expect something monumental. They find a modest boulder approximately 3 meters long, sitting at bottom of stone monument resembling elaborate cage. The rock bears carved date 1620, but historians debate whether pilgrims actually landed here or tradition emerged generations later through oral history calcifying into accepted fact. Viewing experience involves descending steps, peering through protective bars, confronting geological specimen that might hold national mythology weight or might simply be conveniently located. Rock locals began claiming significance in 18th century. We approach with expectations formed by childhood education. Nearby harbor water scent mingles with tourist conversations. Small crowds gather, look down, disperse within minutes. Nothing more to see. No satisfying context. No journey justifying revelation. William, a site park ranger, offered honesty official materials avoid. The rock probably isn't even complete. Historical records suggest portions were chipped away as souvenirs over centuries. What visitors see today might be fragment of disputed legend. That fragmentation mirrors tourist destinations. Fame often precedes verification. By time scholars question mythology, postcards printed and tour buses scheduled stops. Number 9. Manneken Pis. Brussels built international fame around a statue of urinating child. Manneken Pis stands 61 centimeters tall, roughly 2-year-old height. That sentence contains complete physical description of Belgium's most famous landmark. Visitors arrive expecting something. They struggle articulating what exactly, but something more than tiny bronze fountain barely registering as suburban garden decoration. The statue sits at narrow street intersection, protected by iron fence, keeping crowds at distance. Those crowds form constantly, taking photographs, checking guidebooks, confirming right location, dispersing with expressions suggesting they missed something. They didn't miss. Nothing more to experience. We navigate medieval streets following signs, arrive at corner where dozens cluster around figure smaller than carry-on luggage. Belgian waffle scent drifts from vendors, chocolate shops line adjacent streets. But statue offers no narrative, no revelation, no fame justification, beyond centuries transforming quirky fountain into national symbol. Sophie, a Brussels guide, explained contextual detail, adding little satisfaction. The statue has over 1,000 costumes organizations donate. On special occasions, it wears thematic outfits. This matters to locals invested in tradition. Matters little to tourists expecting significance and finding only small bronze. Number 10. Times Square. Bright lights, massive screens, crossroads of the world. Times Square promises sensory overload in city that never sleeps. Reality delivers overload while failing almost everything else. Approximately 50 million visit annually. That density makes personal space theoretical. Pedestrian traffic moves unpredictable waves. Stopping to photograph creates immediate congestion. Famous electronic billboards dominate sightlines advertising with relentless brightness. Underneath spectacle, Times Square reveals as elaborate commercial trap. Chain restaurants charge Manhattan prices for suburban food. Souvenir shops sell identical merchandise inflated. Street performers compete aggressively for tips, sometimes creating confrontations when tips seem insufficient. Costumed characters demand photo payment, feeling less whimsical, more transactional each encounter. We push through crowds along sidewalks designed for fraction of current volume. Noise overwhelms. Car horns blend street musicians blend constant electronic advertising buzz. Hot dog and exhaust scents mingle in summer heat, radiating off asphalt. Nothing feels authentic to New York's actual character. Times Square exists as commercialized performance of tourist expectations. Actual New Yorkers avoid area whenever possible. Marcus, 31-year Manhattan resident, expressed local understanding. Times Square is where New Yorkers never go unless they have to. Designed to extract visitor money, not represent city. That extraction economy defines many famous destinations. Fame becomes product. Experience becomes secondary. Tourists become marks in system converting expectations into revenue. Number 11, Niagara Falls. Nature carved genuinely magnificent here. Over 12,000 years, glacial meltwater created waterfalls moving approximately 3,000 cubic meters per second, peak flow. That's 6 million cubic feet per minute. Scale genuinely impresses, sound resonates through chest. Mist rises in clouds visible kilometers away. Niagara Falls delivers natural wonder at legitimate scale. So why disappoint many? Answer depends which border side visited. American side developed prioritizing commercial extraction over natural appreciation. Hotels, restaurants, tourist attractions, crowd approach. Wax museums, haunted houses, amusement rides compete. The falls become background to commercial gauntlet visitors navigate reaching viewing. What should feel like geological communion instead feels like aggressive theme park walk. We approach commercial strips-lined attractions unrelated to natural wonder. Carnival food scent mingles with mist. Admission fees stack. Parking charges compound. Seeing falls becomes surrounded by extraction experiences. Canadian side offers dramatically better viewing angles and somewhat less aggressive commercialization. But many American visitors never discover, requiring passports and border-crossing logistics day trippers cannot manage. Elena, tour operator working both sides 15 years, confirmed industry preference. American side invested in attractions instead of infrastructure. Canadian side invested in viewing falls. Philosophy shows in every experience aspect. That philosophical difference reveals core truth. Disappointment rarely stems from destination itself. Disappointment stems from human-layered infrastructure and commercialization over places otherwise inspiring. Pyramids didn't disappoint. Vendors created disappointment. Niagara Falls doesn't disappoint. Commercial development created disappointment. The pattern across 11 destinations becomes clear. Famous places disappoint when commerce overshadows experience. When photography promises conditions reality cannot deliver. When small objects carry weight only history books provide. When crowds transform intimate moments into collective chaos. But none had to disappoint. They choose not to because disappointment still generates revenue. Disappointed tourists still pay admission, still buy souvenirs, still complete tourism-optimized transactions. What changes is trust. Travelers feeling deceived research more carefully. They seek alternatives to famous photographed places. They value authentic experience over checklist marks. That transformation represents disappointment's real gift, forcing smarter choices. Next trip planning, consider what you actually want. Photograph matching others? Or experience matching expectations. Those desires often conflict. This list proves fame itself can be experience enemy. Choose accordingly.